is your relationship with time? Are you wired and tired, stressed and overwhelmed, busy and going nowhere? Or just want to scale your business? Welcome to Take Back Time with your host, Penny Zenker. Penny focuses on books, strategies, tools, and tips to help you work smarter and approach your time more strategically. As a result, you can have more energy, focus, and get more done in less time. Be more efficient and effective. Get ready to take back time.
Hello, and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker, and I'm your host. And today we're going to be talking about strategies for your business, strategies of thinking and the way to approach your business in a way that's going to help you, as we do in this show, help you to work smarter. And I'm excited today to have Alex Brookman here with me. And he's a specialist in this area. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll introduce him. He's a strategy entrepreneur. He's an author and executive coach. And he's personally himself, he's built and scaled companies in Europe and Canada, and he's led client projects across the world, helping brands and firms to transform their businesses with the strategies that we're going to talk about today. And he really also is very passionate about helping businesses who are profitable businesses, but are rooted in purpose. So doing well while doing good. And, I'm a big fan of that too. It makes me feel better to know that I'm working with companies that have a greater purpose. So I can imagine how much that brings to you. So Alex, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Penny, for having me. I'm super excited. I've listened to some of your episodes recently, and I'm thrilled to be a guest on your show.
Awesome. So let's start out with one of a couple of questions. I do them, every interview is a little bit different, but I feel like I should start out just by understanding from your perspective, what's your definition of productivity and why?
Productivity is a dangerous word nowadays because what I often see is when I work with my clients especially around strategy and leadership projects and topics, productivity is often just doing more in a given time, which is super dangerous because just by doing more, we're not working smarter. So I'm always saying, let's try and work smarter, not harder.
Right. It's often mistaken for that, right? Yes. That people think that it's just doing more. It actually makes people more stressed out because they feel like they're not being productive. They're not doing more. So I totally agree with you and hear about that. So if you were to define it or give it a new name, how would you do that?
Rather than focusing on being productive, I would always try and help people understand being more first efficient and effective. So doing the right things and doing those things right. And then you see, once you've done those things that are important and urgent, those strategic things that help you grow over the long term, while at the same time having a focus on let me put it that way, having your operations in check so that you are productive in the best sense of the word, producing your services, producing your products. When you've done those two things and you feel you still have room to do something more, be my guest and be more productive then. But first, it's about knowing where to go, what to focus on. And then when you've done your homework and you feel you have more space, then add on top of that and increase what we typically understand in the term productivity, if that makes sense.
How does your work, you've been dedicated to this for many years in helping companies to grow and in essence be more profitable, which one could argue is productive. What's your driver behind that? Why do you do what you do?
I think the simple answer is because I've seen so much crap in businesses. As an employee, I've seen how people burned out or were burned out just because of stress being put on them to be more productive, to do more in the same time without ever asking whether those are actually the right things to do. So that was especially true when I became a strategy consultant. I often had to challenge assumptions first in organizations that I worked with, because they would just do things the way they've always done them. They didn't ask themselves, are these still the right things to do? They definitely were the right things at some point in time, but now they might not be the right things anymore. And rather, people would try and do those things in a more efficient way and be more productive in those things before even asking themselves, are those still the right things? Or should we slightly shift? So I saw what it does to the people if they are not strategic, if they just focus on how they've done things for a long time and don't pause, stop, look and listen and rethink from time to time how they work, what they do, and how they approach work in general. So I feel I'm not in the strategy game because of profitability. I'm not in the strategy game because of competitive strategy. I help people define strategies that are people-centered, that help them grow people and grow their business at the same time.
Love it. We have a similar philosophy. I always say that I use the word productivity, but I'm really about helping people to think and act more strategically, which, like you said, is about constantly stepping back and orienting yourself around whether you're focused on the right things. So that being said, with your methods, how do you help people to get into the practice of identifying what is right for them at this stage? How do you work with people to help them to figure that out?
Most of the time, they know what's best for them. They just don't dare to speak up, or they struggle to formulate their ideas into proper words. Very often, and this is kind of shocking to many, especially to small entrepreneurs who always think those big corporations, they really know what they're doing. No, they don't. Most of the time, they really don't. And it's horrible to say it that bluntly, but most of the companies that I've seen, either as an employee first and then later as a strategy consultant, they do not have a written down strategy, a clearly formulated plan to reaching a certain vision. They just don't. They have something very, very high value, very corporate-y sounding, very full of corporate BS words. But when it comes to putting the strategy into action, or what they call their strategy, putting it into action, it's often just not there. So that's the first thing that I see. They don't have a formulated plan. They have a high-level plan, but when it comes to executing it, they blank very often. But when you ask the people on the shop floor, for example, or middle management, people on the front lines working with clients, they very often have a very good idea about what needs to be done because they listen to their clients, for example. They're not ivory tower strategists. They are frontline people that listen. And what I basically do is I help them formulate what they hear into a cohesive structure, into a cohesive framework that then can be implemented because it leads to somewhere. It has a clear, let's say, 2 to 3 year vision. And then you design a plan on how to reach that vision, how to get there. And very often, those ideas that they have, they are fragments of something larger. And I help them put that puzzle together and identify what they already have in their mind, what's already great, what will help them get there. And I help them identify those pieces that are still missing and then formulate them and connect them to what's already there.
Awesome. So give us something pragmatic. You've got a lot of entrepreneurs listening and, they love, give me a tip now, something that I can do now that, certainly they can bring you in, they can, work more on it. But if they were doing it themselves, what's one thing that they could do right now that's the next best step for them?
So for entrepreneurs, typically, and I'm not saying always, but typically, most entrepreneurs don't have an academic background in business or in strategy or in anything related to that. They often come through a different route, and something that fires them up, something that is super important to them is the foundation for their business. And that's why they became entrepreneurs. So the first thing, and to answer your question, Penny, the first thing that they should do is take that step back and learn about first terminology. We use the term strategy, the term vision, the term purpose. We use them all over the place.
Right.
And very often they're just used in a very wrong context, and they are used because they sound fancy and they're maybe the word of the hour, So take that step back, educate yourself about how those things are connected. What is a vision? How is it connected to strategy? Where does purpose come into play? And even more importantly, how does it come into play? And there are tools out there that help you with that. And if you want to take something hands-on and do something, you can immediately go to my website and download a free strategy toolkit. There it's explained. It's explained what is a vision. It's explained what is a strategy. How do I use certain success factors or key performance indicators, for the lack of a better word, to make what I do measurable. And in that toolkit, I help you first formulate a strategy, a vision, and not just a fancy marketing claim, a really hands-on, down-to-earth for your business, a vision, how it should look like in 2 years. And then I help you break it down in this document. How can I measure that I'm moving towards this vision? And as a third step, and this is the most important one actually, what do I have to do to move the needle? So those things are very simple, but very often we just don't have the background. We don't know these tools exist or how to use them.
So could we just do a vision right now, work with me, so that those entrepreneurs who are listening they're going to go to your website. What is the website that they can go to?
alexthestrategist.com.
alexthestrategist.com. They're going to download their toolkit, but let's just give them a taste of it, right? Give
me a business. Let's make up something. Give me a business.
Okay. What's a business that many people who are listening, actually, I think there's a lot of service businesses, people. So let's take somebody who's, let's say, a coach, a business coach.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So they don't do what you do, but they do other aspects, right? So let's understand that.
Let's take a business coach. If I'm a business coach, most likely I'm a solopreneur. Most business coaches are solopreneurs, not many large purely coaching businesses out there. So let's say you're a solopreneur coach. And you started out some years ago, you're in it, you make your money with it. It's more than just a side hustle. You're serious about it, and you want to be somewhere in the next 2 to 3 years.
Let's change, because I want to have somebody who manages other people.
Makes sense.
So let's pick like a consultant that has a team, right? So let's shift it just in that, because I think that there's quite a few people listening who may be managing a team and may need to see that connection as how do they communicate that vision and see that vision makes it to the bottom, to the front line.
Makes perfect sense, Penny. So let's say a vision in the next 2 to 3 years, and then you formulate it in a way as you were already there, right? Let's say the next 2 to 3 years, what is that? 2024. In 2024, we are active in all of North America, Europe, and Australia.
So you want to define the geography of...
You define everything in your vision. You define your footprint. So that's your geographical footprint. We deliver, and then you define the services that you deliver to, and then you define the client types you work for. You can even write your biggest target clients in this vision. There's one thing that we really need to understand here. A vision is your personal thing. There is no, this is how a vision needs to look like. You define what you put in there. The only thing I ask you to put in there is very, very specific things, not just blah, blah, blah. But even if you put some blah in there, for example, your next sentence could be, we are recognized as the market leader. What does that even mean, market leader? Mm-hmm. In the next step in this toolkit, you will break it down, what it means, and you will even know how you measure that you get there. So you define, for example, you said it's a company with more than just one person in it. You can even define in your vision, our team consists of at least 20 highly trained and dedicated consultants and coaches. So you need to define what highly dedicated means. You need to define what trained and professional means. As a team, we deliver, we constantly overachieve the expectations of our clients. So what does that, for example, mean?
So what I'm hearing also is like some values. So that is that right? Is that you're kind of defining behaviors?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
But But you are on point here, Penny, because your values, your purpose, they need to shine through this vision. They need to be in there.
So do you need to have those first?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Ideally, you have them first, especially your purpose, because your purpose is the one thing that's out there in the world, the one issue that you are perfectly positioned to address and to solve. And this informs your vision. This tells you what you want to build. So in a nutshell, what you need to do is when you write down a vision is you need to define how your company looks and feels in the next, you decide the time frame, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and you need to be specific. As I said, it's not a marketing claim, not something you put on your website, not something super grand and inspiring. There are articles on my website, for example, where I describe what makes a great vision. Mm-hmm. And those things you should have in mind, but it's not that this is the only way to do it. What's more important is that you are specific, that your purpose shines through. And for example, if you say, I also want my values to shine through, this is also something that you can do, but take one step at a time, refine it over time. I have never met any client that sat down and wrote down a vision in one go and it was just what they wanted. It's a refinement process.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I like to do is to have people, like when you say recognized as, right? And maybe I'm trying to think of, I call them characteristics of mm-hmm. your business, right? Is that especially if you're working with a group, a leadership team, or you want your team to be involved in creating this, is to come up with a series of words that describe who you are, right? And who you want to be. So, are you innovative? Are you transformative, mm-hmm. right? So, and to come up with a list and then to vote on those list of words and have those words shine through into your vision. Is that something that you're shaking your head? So I think you like that idea too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can write those terms into your vision. The important thing is you need to define afterwards what they mean. Just by having a word like innovative or transformative in your vision statement, it sounds great, and it might even be attractive for most of your employees because that's what they signed up for in the first place. They want to be in the leading edge. And the next step, make it measurable. Define what it means to be transformative. How does it shine through in your business? What do your clients say about you being transformative? When would they actually agree? And this is probably the most important element in every vision. It's the value for the client that you describe. What is the value that you bring to those who pay the bills in the end?
Absolutely. I love it, right? Because by asking those questions, you really do get specific. And then it's a matter of how you can communicate it. So it's not just creating this vision. It's about how you communicate it to each other, to outside the business, and how you live it, right? So...
And this is where working smarter comes into play, Penny. The moment you have defined your vision, you need to define what is it that we will now focus on? What are the priorities that we focus on? And then we need to understand that this is all about putting strategy into action. Here is the link between a vision, which is a grand goal in the next years, and how you actually make it happen. And how you make it happen is all about transforming your operations in a way that you as a company become able to deliver on this promise of that vision. And here leadership it's all about leadership and communication. And communication this is always just, if you go in any company, I promise you, if you ask anyone, what's the single biggest issue? First, top 3 things, communication will pop up.
Right.
Yeah. So, and in this context, in our context of strategy and change, communication is not a top-down. I stand on a stage in a town hall and tell my people my grand vision and how we're going to get there. That's not it. It's about creating a open, two-way dialogue grounded in respect and the willingness to listen. If I define as a leadership team the new strategy, I just don't do that behind closed doors. At some point, I involve people that I trust, experts that I trust in my company. And when it comes to communicating the strategy and rolling it out, I would always recommend to communicate an 80% vision, and an 80% strategy. Because first, it's never going to be 100%. There is no such thing as perfect. And it just takes way too long. That's the first reason. And the second reason is you want to listen to your people. They have ideas that you did not have in the process. So if you communicate to them where you see, for example, your product development and your sales team to develop into and how they can help bring this strategy to life and reach the vision, they will have ideas on their own. And you need to open those doors and have this two-way dialogue so that great ideas that they have, once they heard your 80% vision, that you're open to listening, funnel them up and incorporate them into the strategy. So it's a living and breathing dynamic process that helps you align every force in the organization so that they're not dispersed, but they're actually aligned and they pull in the same direction because they understand what their role is in implementing the strategy. So if you enable that, that's the winner. This is the single biggest lever you can pull as a leader in an organization to help every single person understand how they contribute to reaching the vision.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they say, well, that sounds like a lot of work to ensure that each individual knows what they contribute. It sounds like a lot of work. I don't have time for that.
Yeah, well, if you don't make time for that, you will probably not have the success that you want, because that's your job as an entrepreneur and a leader. Your job is not to produce. If you run a company, your job is first and foremost to define the strategy and to implement the strategy. And that is all about communication and leadership. You are not the one who delivers the service, who produces the products. As a leader, your job is different than it used to be when you were a solopreneur. A solopreneur is all about producing. But you, as a corporate leader, you are not about producing anymore so much. You're not a manager anymore. You're a leader. And that is your job. And as long as you don't embrace it, you will not find the time that you need in order to do those things properly.
So that's what I was going to say is, so there are a lot of people who are stuck in that limbo position that are trying to shift over to that leader, but are still one of the top producers. How do they, in your opinion and from your experience, how do they find the time to do that?
I've been there. I know exactly how that limbo feels. The only way you get out of that is to enable people around you. You need to train the people around you and enable them and then empower them. So when we scaled the last company that I led, when we scaled and grew bigger and bigger and bigger, at some point in time, as the leaders of the company, we needed to let go and we needed to trust the people around us, that they do the things the right way. And it's not about doing it how I did it or how the company owners before me did that. It's really about how they want to do it. And this is where the connection is to strategy. If they understand the strategy, if they understand what their contribution to success looks like, and then you enable them, you train them so that they have the skills and capabilities in order to perform properly on the job, then it is your job to get out of the way as a leader. If you make space and empower them to make decisions on their own, to do the things how they want them to do, how to achieve them, this is the only way. You need to empower and enable your people and then trust them and step out of the way. Very often, entrepreneurs, and I know how it feels, you need to let go to a certain degree. You need to let go of control. And this is not easy for an entrepreneur.
Well, it's not easy for any of us. I mean, let's face it, we're all control freaks. I've been talking about that for the last number of months, because that's our problem also with the stress of all the uncertainty that's going on in the world around us, whether it's in finance or environment or whatnot, as we exhaust ourselves trying to control things that we can't. So that's so key is to let go. So, but that's a loaded. So I could say, well, yeah, I know I should delegate and I should do that, but I can't. I don't feel like I can find the right people. I have some people, but not the right people who can do it. So you've said what they need to do. Now, emotionally, how do I do it? I know it's a big question, right?
We need to understand. Yeah, we need to understand where trust comes from. What do I, and this is highly personal. What do I, as a company owner, as a leader in an organization, need to trust? There are two ways of approaching it. There is the traditional way. I will trust you once you've proven that you're trustworthy. So the default is mistrust. And the other way is to say, I will trust you until you prove me wrong, that I shouldn't trust you anymore. The default is trust. And you need to, first of all, take stock and understand which person you are. Are you by default a trusting person, or does someone have to earn your trust first? And then you can define tactics and ways and strategies in order to build more trust within your team, within the team you lead, within the organization as such that you lead. And this is highly specific and different in every company. So I can't give you a generic answer because it's not really valuable. What you need to do as a leader is first understand, am I trusting? Am I not trusting? Mm-hmm. And based on that, you need to understand what you need in order to trust. And that can be very, very different from person to person. Once you ask yourself those
categories, because I think what you're saying is really important, and to understand where your come from is. And then I think we could give people categories to think about as to what do I need in this segment or this segment, because some things come to my mind, but I'm here to pick your brain. So, if you were to break those out into segments, what would you say?
Coming back to what you said earlier, Penny, am I not finding the right people? Is that the issue? Is talent the issue? Then I need to find better talent or use the talent that I have and train them. So if my distrust or my fear of letting go comes from, man, there's no one around me that can do the work, then I need to find the people that can do the work or train the people to do the work. If my fear of letting go is, this is all I've ever done in my life, if I let go now, what am I supposed to do then with my time? I love being on the producing side of things. I'm not a leader. I don't know how to lead. So if that's the issue, then educate yourself around leadership. So, and maybe a third category could be, I really love what I do. I've done it for so long. It should be exactly done how I do it because I have proven that my way is the best way of doing things. Then it's really about challenging your own assumption and your own belief systems, because there is never just one way of doing things. So it's really about either educating yourself, educating others, or at some point in time, really need to be honest with yourself as a company leader. Is this still the right business for you? Have you outgrown your business? Is there something else that you are more passionate about now than you were 5 years ago when you founded and built the company?
But I think if that were true, if somebody, then they would have no problem to delegate, and they would be that hands-off leader. If they really didn't want to be there anymore, they would be more comfortable to let go if they're not connected in some way. So
yeah. However, there is this emotional connection of building a company. It's always kind of your baby. So even if
the identity aspect, who would I be without this company? So I do get that. And I think that is really a great way to look at it, right? For people to kind of examine what's going on here so that they can see where's the true bottleneck, right? That's what that discovery process is. And I think once you identify, let's say it's the skill set, that you're really saying that it's the skill set. Some things that I was thinking about is, what kept me, because I built up an IT business and I was a terrible micromanager in the beginning, right? I couldn't let go of that control. I was the one that had the client relationships. I felt like I did it best. And if I let them go to the other people, we'd lose those clients because they wouldn't get the same level of service and so forth. And so it's the skill set that you said, but I'm going to add a couple of categories just to that piece of the skill set is once you have somebody and you've gotten rid of the other emotional issues that keep you from letting go of it, then you've got, what about the process, right? Is if you have a certain way of doing it that you think is a good way, well, define that process so someone could take over the process and then maybe even improve it based on their skill set, right? So you can put some more structure around it. Maybe, defining the communication would make you feel better, right? As to What kind of check-in points will you have with that person? Maybe review sort of some of their thinking practices, right? And to have some brainstorming sessions with them so that they get where you're coming from and you get more where they're coming from. So I don't know, any other ideas in those types of categories that?
What you said just right now, Penny, about how to avoid that you micromanage is similar to what we discussed earlier today when we talked about companies not having a written down strategy. Very often what we see is that the moment you start writing things down, be it a strategy, be it a process, be it a how-to, the moment, first of all, writing crystallizes your thinking. The moment you write things down, you need to really penetrate them. And the moment you have your thoughts front to end in front of you, written down, and they make sense, this is when you can hand it over to someone and say, this is how we do it. Try it. If you find a better way, tell me, because I want to learn. So, and this is true for all kinds of fears of a leader, to let go, to trust how to do things. I'm still running the biggest client account for my previous company that I built. And we are exactly in that process of handing it over. Because I live in Vancouver, the client mainly sits in Europe. There's a 9-hour time zone difference, so there must be a better way of doing things, right? It's not that I will do this for the rest of my life. I need to empower and enable the people in this company so that I can hand it over, so that they can make it better. And so the process that I'm in right now is, on the one hand, an emotional process. I've led that client account for 9 years. It's really hard for me to let go, but I know it's the right thing to let go. Right. And that's the reason why I write things down, why you write down how the client developed, who the key network is. And when we talk about client relationships and the fear of losing a client, that fear will go away when you break it into categories. Where is the fear based in? Is that a fuzzy fear? Is it very concrete? Where does it come from? Fear protects you from making stupid decisions. So the moment you break down that fear into categories, is this a real fear, or is that some theoretical threat? The moment you know whether it's real fear, you can do something about it. If it's in your circle of influence, you can directly influence that this does not materialize, right? So you build out your knowledge, you write it down, and then you let people play with it and add their thoughts. And all of a sudden, you're not alone in it anymore. All of a sudden, you know, hey, cool. Those people left and right in my team, they have a vested interest in this. They want to make this successful. It's not that if I drop the pen, everything will go down the drain, because they want to make it work. It's their thing now too. So sharing success with others and having them have a say and contribute ideas, we're shifting slightly into the topic of workplace culture here. What is the type of culture that I should build out as a company owner to avoid all those fears of letting go, to avoid all those trust issues? You can just, from the outset, ask yourself, at some point in time, I might want to exit. At some point in time, I might want to grow. What will I need? What needs to be in place in those 3, 5, 10 years? And how can I build it? So that we avoid falling into this trap that we described from the outset.
It just occurred to me, I just had a thought, is that, as an owner, business owner, you've got your vision and where you want to take the business, but you don't necessarily have your own development plan. You develop plans for your team, but you don't develop your own. And I wonder if we went through the process as business owners to develop our own personal and professional development plan, if it wouldn't make it a lot easier to let go and say that in order for me to get to this next level of my development plan, like you said, getting it clearly written down, that's something that we very rarely clearly write down.
And this is the reason why, as the last step in my strategy toolkit, you need to define the capabilities. This is exactly the reason, Penny. It's not about only the capabilities of the people in my company. It's also my capabilities as a company leader. what do I need to educate myself in order to get this company to the next level? Mm-hmm. And those can be skills that are completely foreign to me right now. You might have reached a growth stage where capital needs to flow into the company. So you need to educate yourself about stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 seed financing, for example. Or you want to take your company public at some point in time. How on earth do capital markets work? Those questions, you don't need to ask yourself this question when you're a solopreneur. But once you've reached a certain stage, a certain maturity level of you want to sell the company, how does M&A work? All those things, right? You need to start to educate yourself around the topics that will help you as a corporate leader to lift the organization to the next level. And that needs to be in sync with your business strategy. Yeah. Because you can educate yourself around, I don't know, crocheting. Fine, but does that help grow your business? So ask yourself where you want to be, ask yourself how to get there. And the third question is, what do you need to learn in order to move the needle?
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you so much I really have enjoyed, the conversation. I think there's been a lot of great tips that you've brought out for those entrepreneurs who are listening. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you that, that you think is really important that you share regarding what our conversation has been so far?
I mean, this conversation is grounded in the question, what do we need in order to work smarter, not harder, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And it might sound oversimplistic, and I don't want it to sound simplistic. It's just the way I will say it. It's if you want to work in a more productive way, stop producing and start thinking. It's counterintuitive, I know, but you need to understand that you can turn the wheel only to a certain speed, and then you need to rebuild the engine. And strategy is really about rebuilding the engine in order to go faster, to go higher, to go more successful. So at some point in time, and I typically do this with my clients once or twice a year, you press the pause button and you ask yourself which parts of the engine have reached their end of life cycle. And you don't need to rebuild the entire engine, right? If something in your car breaks down, you not necessarily need to exchange the entire engine. It's just a little piece and a part. But once you've replaced that part and built in something more high performant, you probably can go faster and further than before. So have those check-ins, those strategic check-ins once or twice a year where you step back is absolute key to be successful over the longer term.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's one of my big things is stepping back. And I have a whole talk about doing that and how important that is. So thank you for kind of taking everything we've talked about, right? And talking about how we start that process is by stepping back. So Alex, thank you so much for being here and, encouraging everybody also to take that free toolkit that you have available on your website. What's that website again?
The easiest way is to go to alexthestrategist.com. If you are able to spell my name correctly, you can also go directly to brookman.ca. But honestly, I think alexthestrategist.com is the easiest way. And it's the first thing you see on the landing page. Give me the free intentional strategy toolkit. You click it and you get it into your inbox.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks very much, Penny.
And thank you all for being here. I want you to take away, no matter whether you're an entrepreneur or you work for a big organization, that whole point of understanding around stepping back and making it a practice, not just something that you do once in a while that you might forget on doing, but setting a regular rhythm to step back. And whether that's look at just the way that you do things. It might not be the engine for the entire organization. It might be your engine and specific things that you're working on and how you can reinvent the way that you do things. Or just look what's working, what's not working anymore. So, I'm sure that no matter where you are in your career and you're listening, this is a strategy and a talk that really supported you in getting to the next level of your level of productivity. So thank you all. My name is Penny Zenker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Today's topic is another opportunity for you to put the knowledge you learned into practice. Tune in again next week for more strategies that will help you have more energy and focus to get more done in less time, so you can continue to take back time.